So October is World Mental Health Month. Yesterday was World Mental Health Day, but you know, it's important that we look at this frequently, not just on these special days and months, because the impact of the grief and uncertainty that the pandemic has brought is definitely affecting people's state of mind. And a year in, it seems we're not getting used to it either. South Africa's Depression and Anxiety Group is reporting an alarming increase in the number of calls to their helpline. I'm joined now by Cassie Chambers of SADAG. Good evening, Cassie. So this time last year, we knew that the calls were up as well. So you're telling me that we're not getting used to this. It's actually getting worse, and the cries for help are actually increasing even on last year.
It is indeed. You know, we're seeing such an increase in the number of calls. Every month, our call volumes are growing. The more people are reaching out online, sending more SMSs, emails. I think the great thing is we're encouraged to see that so many people are reaching out. They know that they can contact SADAG. If we're seeing such an increase just in our call volumes, we're concerned what's happening on the ground in communities where the need is felt even more. So if this is what we're seeing now, we are concerned that in the next year or two, we don't yet know when COVID will be over. The mental health impact is going to be huge, and we don't have enough resources at the moment to deal with this impact.
Yeah, I suppose the details of those calls give you a bit of a snapshot of our sort of national mental health. What are the reasons, what are the main reasons why people call in? Is it mostly grief counselling, or is it fear of the unknown and financial concerns?
It's probably a mix of all of that. You know, when we look at the nature of the calls and we track this on a daily basis, even after every wave that we've had, we've seen that the nature of the calls around that time are a lot more grief, trauma, loss. But now, more than 18 months into COVID, the impact of COVID on every aspect of our life, how we work, our schooling, financial situation, grief, our own illness, so many aspects of our lives have been impacted. So the top reasons we're seeing on the helpline are depression, anxiety and stress, trauma, loss and grief. More concerning, 1 in every 5 calls are suicide related. So the number of calls we're receiving to our suicide helpline are growing each and every month.
Is 1 in 5 related to serious suicide concerns? Is that higher than your average sort of amount of suicide calls that you'd get?
Absolutely. And I think when we're looking at us being a suicide crisis center, we anticipate we're going to get more suicide calls. However, we're really looking at crisis intervention, phoning hospitals, looking where there's spaces for beds. Concerning as well is that we're getting younger and younger calls, adolescents, teenagers, 12, 13-year-olds who are needing assistance. And our volunteer counselors are really thinking out of the box and trying to find resources and urgent crisis assistance to help so many people around the country. Because with mental illness, and especially now with COVID, so many of us can relate to feeling overwhelmed or stressed or depressed, especially children, especially adolescents. Mental health does not discriminate. It affects any age, any race, any gender, and we've seen that from the number of calls that we're getting.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, the age demographic, because young people, of course, are meant to be embracing the world and getting out into the world, and they've been cut off from the world. But equally, I suppose, older people who may have lost a life partner are grieving that complete change and that loss of that loved one. It is a very difficult time indeed. I would imagine that people are also finding ways to cope, you know, and there are ways we need to look after ourselves, and sometimes a bit of an escape route, like a great book or binge-watching telly, or even a bit of a drink or something sweet to eat, is not necessarily harmful in itself, but I would imagine that there are flags that we need to look out for in ourselves or in others, that we're getting close to perhaps addiction, to try and escape what we're going through.
Absolutely. I think all of us have mental health, and we should all be looking at every single day, looking after our mental health and doing things to help us to de-stress or escape or decongest from all the stresses around us. And that's important for every South African. But those with a mental illness, it affects the way that we act, feel, behave. It really disrupts the way our daily functioning is. We have seen that there are more people that are turning to perhaps negative coping skills, ways of escaping, maybe getting to alcohol or drugs more to deal with the stress and to deal with everything that's going around them. We're often seeing that when women have depression, We're more likely to comfort eat. And in some cases, people with depression lose their appetite completely. So I think it's really important to kind of do a mental health check-in and see how are you feeling, how are you coping, what is really going on, and link some of those physical symptoms with those emotional symptoms that we experience on a daily basis and see how it's impacting our functioning. I think the most important thing, and especially now for Mental Health Awareness Month, is just to make it okay that it's okay to seek help. It's okay to talk about it and to seek professional help if needed, if you're not coping.
How do you spot the red flags that perhaps an adolescent is not coping?
I think for any friend, family member, parent, caregiver, and this could be for your colleague at work even, I think it's really important to also trust your gut. And when you're having a check-in and you're saying, how are you really doing? How are you really coping today? So starting that conversation is really important. Creating those safe spaces for your teenager, your child, your partner, or even just a friend to connect with. I think some of the symptoms you can look out for is withdrawing from family and friends. In a time of COVID where we're all isolating, I think we have to look at, is this happening all the time? Are they withdrawing from family and friends completely, even online, for example? Are you seeing a change in their school performance? Are their marks dropping? Have they lost interest in things that they used to enjoy? Is there a change in their eating or sleeping habits? So all of these symptoms you can look out for as red flags. And if you are concerned, ask and get help.
I want to ask you about grief, because some people have lost not one person, but two, sometimes even three. And there's a sense, and I've had this conversation with a number of people, that we're almost in a warlike mentality, that you just have to carry on because you actually don't have any other option. Are you seeing people delaying their grieving? And is that a bad thing, actually?
COVID has really disrupted how we're grieving. We don't get to have funerals. We don't get to pay our respects. We're not able to do the traditions that help us with that grieving process. So for a lot of people who've had to wait months to bury a loved one or to go and see a family member or to send their condolences, you know, we're doing things so differently during COVID, online memorials, sending messages, taking videos. It really has affected how we grieve. And we see a lot of people who are kind of stuck in that limbo, not quite sure how to grieve, what is normal, what's not normal. And I think for everyone, the grieving is so different. We've also noticed that a lot of people who have, as you mentioned, lost multiple people, and often in a short space of time, have people that call in who said they've gone to so many funerals they can't cry anymore, and they feel numb and have no, emotions or response, and they kind of think, well, am I normal? Am I going crazy? And I think it's really important to also just realize that a lot is going on. Trauma, grief is really hard, and especially losing anyone during COVID where we're not able to do these normal processes. So I think for a lot of people, their grief is often stuck and really heavy. And this is why we're really encouraging people, if you know someone that has lost someone recently, check in, encourage them to get some help and to talk to someone. It really just helps them to jumpstart on that grieving process, which could take a lot longer during COVID because all these different factors are at play.
Yeah, we just got to be gentle with ourselves and with our loved ones. Very much an important issue. Thank you so much for bringing us such important information. Cassie Chambers of SA's Depression and Anxiety Group, SADAG.